Hi everyone, my name is Benjamin Nowak, and this is the Smallmouth Experience, and welcome to my workshop. This is where I make a lot of the baits that you guys see me fish in my videos, from drop shot sinkers to blade baits to swim bait heads. There's a lot of things that I make here behind me that I take out to the water with confidence and catch big fish. It's a super rewarding hobby, and it's something that I want to expose to you guys to really break down like the cost of everything associated with making baits. A lot of people get into this hobby thinking that it's going to save them money, which it might in the long run, but there's a lot of other added benefits to making your own baits. So what I want to do in this video is break down the cost of everything and talk to you guys about what you need to get started making your own baits, the benefits of that, and really break down the true cost. And the way we're going to do that is with sticky notes. We're going to run through my entire workshop and talk about the essentials and the non-essentials. Your essentials are going to be here on these green sticky notes. The non-essentials or recommended products are going to be here on these blue sticky notes. We're going to stick these on things to break down the true cost of making baits. So let's get started. The very first thing you'll need, regardless of what you're making, is some sort of mold. Now, the company that I use is called Do It Molds. They're one of very few companies out there, but each of these molds costs between $35 to $39. Now what's cool is they have hundreds of different molds, probably 20 different ball head jig molds, and so you can get really specific with what you want to make. Like I have 2 different drop shot molds which I play around with and have really gotten the opportunity to understand where each of those shines. You can get very specific with what you're making, and they have hundreds of different molds for you to choose from. Now from there, you're going to need something to melt your physical lead in, and what I use is the Lee's Production lead pot. This is a 10-pound lead pot. It's what I would recommend. Pours the lead really well, heats it up. You don't have to like worry about dumping lead on yourself, but this is 78 bucks. Okay, I know a lot of you guys are like, whoa, 78 bucks is a lot of money for something to melt the lead, and I haven't even made a jig yet. So 78 bucks for that, but as an alternative, there is what's called the Palmer's ladle. Now, essentially what this is it's a heated ladle, and you can heat your lead up in the ladle and dump it into the mold, but you're looking at about 46 bucks for that. If you're going to look to do it in what I would consider the most efficient way, I would get some sort of lead production pot, like this Lee's Production pot for 78 bucks. And that's what I use and trust and really think is the ultimate optimal way to go. Now the next thing you're going to need to put paint on your jigs is some sort of heat gun or torch. What you have to do to put paint on your jigs, if you guys don't know, you heat up the lead and then you dip it in the powder paint. And when you dip that hot lead into the powder paint, essentially what it does is that paint melts, adheres to the jig head, so that way it looks like this instead of looking like your bare lead jig head. So for a heat gun from like Home Depot, 25 bucks. 25 bucks for a heat gun. You can probably get a torch for around the same price, but really the heat gun is probably the best. You don't overheat your lead that way. You don't have an open flame. You just have a heat source blowing straight up into the air. 25 bucks for a heat gun. Then to put powder on your jigs, there's 2 ways you can do it. You can either just take your paint and dip your lead heads in there. It's fairly effective, but the problem you have is you get a lot of clumping. You get a lot of extra paint on there that you don't need. Makes your jigs look a little bit less smooth when they're finally done. So what I use is what's called a fluid bed. Now what a fluid bed does, you put the paint in the top and then it's hooked to some sort of air source. It blows air up in through the paint, and the paint starts to turn into what looks to be a fluid. It's still obviously powder, but it's physically moving around in there, and you can dip your jig in really, really well. It comes out really clean looking. So if you want to buy a fluid bed from somewhere, it's going to cost you about $100. If you want to make a fluid bed, you can make one for $35. That's what I have done. But I would recommend some sort of fluid bed, because with a fluid bed, you're going to have a lot more effective paint coating. It's going to look a lot better, and your jig is just going to have a lot better finish on it when you are done. From there, to bake your jigs, you're going to need some sort of toaster oven. Now, toaster ovens are relatively cheap, but what you do is after you're done painting that jig with your fluid bed or dipping it in the paint, you put it in your toaster oven at 350 for 30 minutes. Finishes that paint, makes it rock hard. That is a $30 toaster oven you can get from Walmart. You can get anywhere. I just don't recommend doing it inside, like taking your jigs inside and using the toaster oven you're going to use for your like sandwiches later. So go buy a specific toaster oven that you can keep out in the garage in your workshop for your jigs. Now we're moving into the physical products you need to make the jigs themselves. We're going to start with the lead. To get clean 100% or 99% pure lead, It's going to cost you $3 per pound. You can buy this through some of the local tackle stores where like you would get the stuff that you need to make your jigs. I go on eBay, I find like 10 pounds of lead for 30 bucks, but you're looking at $3 per pound for lead. 1 pound of lead will make you about 30 jigs, 30 half-ounce jigs, 32 half-ounce jigs. Then you're going to need some sort of components. You're going to look at about $1.90 for 10-pack of mustad hooks. If you want mustad hooks, a 10-pack, it's $1.90. That averages out to about 19 cents per hook. From there, you're going to need miscellaneous accessories. Okay, so if you're making a jig, you typically have like a weed guard or you have a bait keeper. So miscellaneous accessories for that jig, another $15. And what that would be like if you're making a sinker, you have these little wire forms or swivels right here. So you're still looking at some sort of accessory, whether you're making a sinker or a jig. You still have other things that go into that jig. Then you're going to need the paint itself. The paint is about $9 for 4 ounces. So for this container here, this is from Lure Parts Online. This is a $9 jar of paint. Will last you a really, really, really long time, but you're still looking at $9. And finally, you're going to need tools and protection. If you guys don't have this, I'm talking about like safety glasses, gloves, channel locks, wire cutters, a file. I would say you're looking at about $30 for that. So when this is all said and done, everything that you need, these are the true costs. Now I added it up. You're looking at about $300 if you go with everything that I recommended. The lees pot, making a fluid bed, you're looking at about $300. If you go with something cheaper, you're looking at maybe $270, $235. So it's a very mildly expensive hobby to get into. But now here's the benefits of this. So for me, one of the biggest benefits is not the cost savings. As you guys can see, it's kind of expensive to get started in this. But what I love about making baits, one, it's an awesome hobby. Gets you out of the house, gets you doing something fishing related, especially when it's cold and nasty up here in the Midwest. But one of the other big things, and my favorite, kind of most important thing, is having an advantage over other guys. I can make baits that guys don't have or put certain hooks into baits. For example, this hair jig that I made the other day. I love that Midwest finesse jig mold on that hair jig, but I wanted a very specific hook in there. So what I'm using is an O'Shaughnessy Bend GARMIN 111 hook in there, so I can really customize every single component. I can choose the paint that I use on the head. This is an ultra durable powder paint. There's just so many ways that you can customize the baits that you're making to give you an advantage, and that really is where all of the benefits lie to making your baits. You can do everything from making bladed jigs with a big ol' owner jungle hook in there with living rubber skirt and some flash. You can do so many different things by having the ability to make your own baits that are going to give you real advantages when you get out there on the water. Now, if I could recommend to you guys 4 molds for a smallmouth angler that you guys should consider, I would recommend a drop shot mold. I personally really like the teardrop drop shot mold. Has multiple cavities. You can make a bunch of different sizes. I believe all the way from really, really small, 1/16, all the way up to 1 ounce. So you can make a variety of different sizes with this teardrop mold. It is awesome. I pour so many of these drop shot molds every single year. A ton of drop shot weights. Another one would be some sort of swim bait head. The one that I would recommend is the Shake It head. It is basically a ball head jig, but you have the opportunity to go either 90-degree line tie or 60-degree flat line tie. Really, really versatile. You can use it for tube heads. You can use it for swim baits. Super versatile mold for swim baits. So that's a Shake It ball head mold. Another one, if you guys are big Ned rig fishermen, is the Midwest Finesse jig head. This is that jig I just showed you that I use for that hair jig, but I use it for Ned rigs, and you can use it for finesse jigs as well, but it's kind of like a secret. So this Midwest Finesse jig is really, really cool. This is an assorted sizes one, but they just came out with production molds. So what that means is a production mold has a bunch of the same sizes. So I have one for 1/16 and one for 3/32. And when I make these hair jigs, I'll use that 3/32 mold and make 5-6 hair jigs at a time with one pour. And the last one that I would recommend if you guys are big cold water smallmouth fishermen is the blade bait mold. Now this is a mold I've used a ton, poured a ton of these, and what had really kind of turned me on to this was when I was breaking off $7 blade baits. I'm like, man, I cannot afford this. It is miserable, so I bought the blade bait mold, and I have fallen in love with this thing. This is the only blade bait that I throw anymore. I pour a ton of these. I probably pour 50 of these a year, and it's just a really, really awesome mold. I think this goes all the way from a 1/4 ounce up to 3/4 of an ounce. This is a super versatile mold, saves me a ton of money. Awesome, awesome blade bait. Just a really, really useful mold that I pour a ton of blades through. So those are the true costs of making a bait. When you go from lead to full-blown hair jig, that's what it's going to cost you. But it's a super awesome hobby. Really, really good way to customize the baits that you're making and get really dialed in on certain techniques that you have a lot of confidence in. So if you guys have any questions or comments, please let me know in the comment section below. If you guys enjoyed this video, go down and give it a thumbs up. If you're not already, please subscribe to the channel. I would really, really appreciate it. Let's get 20,000. We're so close. We're like 600 away. But as always, thank you guys for watching. Take care, Tight Lines. God bless. Pursue passion.